Can Bitcoin and Ethereum continue to hold their position in the market with the volatility that we are facing around some of the news with Silvergate and a lot of other things happening in the market right now? There's kind of some situations, I think, brewing that could really face a bit of a challenge when it comes to Bitcoin holding out in the next few weeks. So we're going to dive into that today. My name is Paul Barrow. Welcome back into Tech Path. One of the things we do here, guys, as you guys know, is we'll really dive into some of the TA and we kind of blend that with news. If you're new to the channel, first thing I ask you guys to do is just subscribe. You know, this is going to start your education journey around Bitcoin, crypto, blockchain, Web3. That's really what our channel dives into. So just like the video, subscribe. You'll be a part of our community. It's going to be really easy. I do want to thank our sponsors before we get started today. That's iTrust Capital. One of our longtime channel partners, and when you look at anything around the crypto IRA space, this is one of the companies that really leads the way. They do a great job. You can invest in crypto, gold, even silver, using your IRA. It is a self-directed IRA, so it's pretty easy to manage, and one of the things they really do a good job on is education. So they can really give you some insights on how to do this for your own IRAs, but also some of the strategies. Not that they do advisory work, but they give you some of the examples of how to utilize IRAs in your tax planning. 6 billion in transactions on 185,000 accounts. So definitely one of the top crypto IRAs out there. Make sure and check them out. Use our link below. You'll get a $100 funding reward if you decide to launch one up. All right, guys, let's get into it today. And I want to kind of start on Bitcoin. And before I get started, I want to bring in our TA analyst, Paul. Great to have you on the show.
Hey, Paul. Thank you for having me.
It's going to be dueling Pauls today.
That's what I said. I was like, love the show and love the name. So
there you go. All right. Paul Sampson, of course, obviously leading crypto. He and I have been kind of jousting back and forth on Twitter. And I said, hey, let's just go in and let's get you in on one of the shows to do some TA on what's happening in the space. So that was why we decided to bring him on. So anyway, you guys are doing a good job. I know you and your partner really break down Bitcoin, crypto, and a lot of altcoins. Caught my attention. When we look at analysts, obviously Gareth Soloway comes on our show quite a bit. Evan Aldo, we've had Tim Warren on here recently. And we try to flex out a little bit with bringing in as many TA mindsets as possible. So that's really the goal here for you guys watching today. Paul, I want to jump to one of the news items, and that is Bitcoin's move that might be brewing. This is coming, obviously, around some people saying that this might stay a little bit flat. But at the same time, there are some things happening in the space around Silvergate. I won't jump into those right now. What I want to go to is your chart and look at where you see Bitcoin currently holding, whether or not it can hold this 16.8 to 16.5 position, or what do you think is going to be happening in the near future?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see here. All right. So for Bitcoin right now, right? So it's pretty neutral area, if you ask me, right? So, my partner and I, we really do break things down, utilizing ranges based on volume, horizontals, and things of that nature, right? So a little different than, patterns and some of the other, strategies out there. And when you look at Bitcoin right now, we had this high come in right at 18,300, and just kind of zooming over to the left side here, you see that essentially came up and took the high from previously the month before that in November. And then we had a nice little move back down, essentially just creating this overall range here. As far as any upside, potentially, you'd really want to clear and get back above this area. And, to do so, you got some really big areas, in front of us. And one thing in the short term, right? So we got this gold pocket, which, many kind of, tend to look towards. That's up here about 17,644. Some other major areas around there to note is actually where we pretty much came up and, tapped out at last month, which is an average of price. So we utilize averages really heavily. So this was the previous month's average of price. So this is right here about 1817, 1812, depending on the exchange you're looking at. And you can see how the price shot through and then closed back below here on a 4-hour time frame. So a lot of times this is looked at as, liquidity grab, a fake out, an SFP, which is a swing failure pattern. There's many different terms you could call it, but essentially this came up and stopped a lot of people out, right, that were coming in for shorts and then had a really nice little move down to the downside. This is about a 12 to 13% move on Bitcoin, a 15% move on ETH, and then 30 and 40% moves out of the altcoins. But as far as the short-term move at the moment is, the question is, are we going to come back down and actually take these lows back here at 15, and 4 in this region here?
Right.
We came down and essentially, some could look at this as like a double bottom, which, potentially it did do that. But you did, in a sense of a liquidity idea, right? Like to stop out people, stop out other traders before, a move actually gets underway. There's a lot of, stops that are going to be, set in place down here. So a lot of fuel if we were to come down to this region and potentially turn around. That is one thing to just kind of keep in mind as far as looking at this in the current, range that we're in. I'm looking at this in the sense of we do everything once again kind of based on time frames. In this nature, in this instance, this is December's range for Bitcoin. You can see we kind of had some deviation, re-entered the range here. We have a point of control here that I see a lot of people starting to kind of focus in on these as well. So this is not necessarily an area where you want to buy or sell, but this is definitely a short-term target. So this is the overall highest volume for this time frame. So whatever range you're looking for. So for all of December, 16,800 is really that that main area. So it's essentially where we're kind of holding right now. So in the short term, to see this kind of continue onward and upward a bit, you really want to see 16.8 hold. From there, potentially a rotation of this range, which meaning low to high would take place. That takes us up to about 17,200. Give or take. We do have the 0.5 fib at about 17.3 and a couple of other things up in this window, right? So I bring this up because it's really just a level by level game at the moment. And until you really start living back above 18,000, I think that a major, a bigger move is, can't really be had at the moment. But in the short term, kind of playing through these levels is definitely something that can be done. If you do come up to these regions and actually get a rejection, then all you'd be doing is putting in a high, lower high, potentially come back down and lower the range, and then even possibly make some new lows. But 17,300, potentially all the way up to about 17.8, that $500 window definitely has my attention. If you look at this once again in a sense of a average of price, we have a untapped quarterly. So this is the average of price for the last quarter. It does come in here about 17,800, just about back up to the highs here. You also have they're inefficiencies in the market, right? And they're called single prints, and you can identify these using a software they're called a footprint chart. It's on Exo charts, things of that nature. There's a couple others, but these are essentially, where if you look over here, it's basically just like this capitulation area. So, when you get a fast move down like this, you tend to get a fast move up, closes out this region. And that's something to kind of keep in mind. And you can see that we're right now just below that. And that also does close about 17.3. So between 17.3 to 17.8, this is an area to me that if we come back up, really want to be paying attention here, because just like this over here, we actually were looking at this coming into December, which was at 17,800. And I know that we're going to talk on some CPI data and potentially some other news here. And this was actually the last CPI date, right? When we got the last CPI report, we shot up to right at the hit the monthly level spot on. Then the next day is when we came around, and this was when I believe this was the Fed meeting, right?
Yep.
So all the news was stacked right here. You had Sam Bankman-Fried was getting arrested the day before that. A lot of good news was all coming into the market, or potentially just not bad news for once. And then at the end of the day, we still had the overall just push up, stopped out, and then comes back down. So these areas are really big levels to look for, and it's honestly 17.8 and push up to 18K. You get above that, and I think we have a really nice opportunity to move substantially higher. In the short term, on to the downside now, like once again, if you do come up to these areas and get a rejection, it's things to kind of be aware of is, what to look for as far as, the breakdown, right? If we start coming back down, losing some areas, you do have the overall previous month's range down here at 16,600, and giving that up would really start to look like we're going to come back down and challenge into the lows. So there's a couple of areas down here as well. Once again, we utilize horizontals. So zooming out to like a daily time frame, you can see where there's daily support and resistances. And these ones that I have marked out here are untapped. So they have not been back tested on the way back down. One major one comes in right basically at the low. So areas to be aware of, and then obviously come back down losing this region, obviously we'd be putting in a new low. And then from there, we were talking about this earlier, right? So it's like one major area that we have on our chart that we're paying attention for Bitcoin is 13,880. All right, and I'm just going to turn this off real quick. Turn off December. I'm going to bring up the Q4. So this is our last quarterly range as well. Just kind of bringing it up to kind of showcase, once again, you get above 18K. We got a really nice potential move up to about 19.5 and then some. Otherwise, you're really just kind of meeting and rooting around in this region. You got the Q4 low, which is obviously our current low. And if you were to come down and lose that, get a back test, what I'd be looking for is potentially down to 13,880, like I said, which is a annual level. So this is a 12-month level here for Bitcoin,
right,
dating back to essentially 2020. So those would be, the immediates at the moment, right? And it's
well, at least that's the top and the low, for
right.
for where the market is going. Yeah, but you're playing both sides here. So I hate that when TA guys do that, is they give us the high and then they give us. I understand how you guys are playing this, but at the same time, when you look at some of the market, positions that are in right now, one of the items that we're watching, obviously, is the coming FOMC meeting. Plus some of the things that just here, recently reported. This was a news story that was talking about the Bitcoin price facing a pump and whack ranging moment. Kind of to your point, where we could see it kind of move a little bit. What they were talking about was this little move to 16.9, and then it reverted back down into the 16.8 all the way down to 16.7, was what we saw within a very short period of time. When you look at that and you look at some of the CPI data, they're kind of talking about the CPI data coming in, and obviously where we saw this happening in the past 30 days around CPI, what this might look like right before the FOMC, along with some of the other indicators coming into the market. Because one of the things that obviously is hitting is you've got the wire situation that's playing into this, which is, it could be somewhat of a contagion. There's a handful of companies that utilize wire that play into this that might also have a factor into this. Then you've got the whole issue around bank transfers with wire. Then you've got Silvergate coming in. There's still quite a bit of bad news, but I've been surprised that we've been able to hold this position right now where we are with Bitcoin. Now, we'll talk about ETH in a second. When you look at what, let's just take a look at Silvergate real quickly. They sold assets at a loss. They cut staff to cover basically about an $8 billion withdrawal differential. This, to me, is probably the biggest news, at least of the last 30 days outside of FTX, because Silvergate, obviously one of the big players in this. But at the same time, all of that happening, and we didn't necessarily see that much movement in Bitcoin or even in Ethereum. In fact, Ethereum actually did fairly well over the last couple of days. Do you think that we are at a resiliency point for Bitcoin to kind of hold this range of where it's been holding in this mid 16 for maybe the next, at least until FOMC, which is end of month, early next month?
Yeah, so, just backing up to the statement on giving both sides, it's really right now it's so neutral, or you kind of have to remain neutral right now because we are just straight ranging, right? So it's really about planning your reaction, I guess is what I'm trying to hammer out. In the short term, I could totally see us pushing up 17.3, 17.8, right? Which is not a huge move by any means. I mean, we're talking a couple percent here for Bitcoin. And then at that point, you really want to pay attention to see how things unravel. With CPI kind of coming up again, just like how we were looking at the last run up, you had that CPI data come in, and it just timing is always of the essence with those news events, right? They always propel the price, whether it's to the upside or to the downside short term.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as far as and for Ethereum, is the resilience and things between the two. Could we hold right here? Absolutely. I think that there is. A definite case to be made, looking at the chart as well, you have possible double bottom. Like I said, you have, lows that are intact, a potential higher high right now and a higher low. I mean, you could be definitely putting in a small uptrend and turn around just from here. Definitely catch a lot by surprise if that was the case, right? Because I know everybody is anticipating a lot lower. So and just for me, I mean, things really change when, we cruise above really holding above 16.8 is the key, like in the short term. So I mean, that's really where we are also, which is nice. So I mean, yeah, if you hold above this level and we kind of can see some I guess not terrible news and things like that play out, but yeah, I think that there's potential for where we could actually see a decent sized rally come out of this. It's just being prepared for those other areas, is definitely something to keep in mind, especially because we are not trending right now. I mean, the trend is still technically down as far as the larger term, time frame, but right now it's trying to come out of that, right? We're trying to look for these reversal ideas. So I guess that's
yeah, and you have the situation with Silvergate that's brewing here right now. Obviously, if you look at some of the fallout that could potentially hit this, there's some pretty significant banking customers that they've got tied into this. Obviously, Coinbase, Circle, Bitstamp, Kraken, and Paxos. There's a handful of really, I think, major titans in the space that are tied to Silvergate with what they're dealing with right now in terms of deposits falling out, the amount of what, and if the bank will be able to make it through this situation is going to be key. If they don't, this could start that domino effect that many people are talking about. I noticed BitBoy had a tweet today. I don't necessarily agree with everything what he's saying here, but I wanted to bring it. He's basically saying, hey, it could be a panic day, a lot of news in the last 12 hours. He thinks that Bitcoin is potentially, if it could hold the 15K range. All of this, of course, still pushing toward what's happening with Genesis, Silvergate, DCG, all of that. And then you've got the unemployment scenario. Now, the unemployment scenario, I don't necessarily think is as big of an issue. And let me kind of explain this. I'm going to go over to this CNBC because this breaks down the unemployment a little bit better. This was the ADP chart that BitBoy was referencing. So the December number rose by 235,000 for the month, which was ahead of the numbers. But the thing that I think a lot of people forget is, look at this right here. Leisure and hospitality was 213,000 of that 235. So my point on this, and this is something, we have a sister network that's in the food and the restaurant space, so we study this a lot over there. And one of the things that I've talked to many food and restaurant executives about around this, billion-dollar brands that are in the position around this is they've had pent-up demand for labor because they had so many people that were laid off during that period of time. So again, I think this is just tracing back up to where labor markets were. The real number I think that we need to be watching is probably going to be in March or April when we start to see those Q4 numbers. When you look at Ethereum, because Bitcoin, I don't necessarily feel like it's going to see a major drop off, even if Silvergate were to fall. Could we see a 15K run? And if we did see a 15K run, where would that put Ethereum in your charts?
Yeah, so this is the thing too about where we are. Let me just see if I can make sure I'm sharing here again. Okay, so first off with Bitcoin here, just another little idea. Not idea, but just to take a look at that. To drop from where we are, let's just say we put it down to 15K in that region, talking like 10% from where we are now. Yeah. Which we all know that that's a 10% move. Yeah, it's like that's a Wednesday afternoon for half of the crypto market here. So just kind of to answer that question right off the rip, I would say if we run it down to the lows for Bitcoin, in the sense of 15K, potentially lower in that nature, there's one area that I've had my eye on for several months now, and this is all the way down here at $1,038. And it's more of a range because I think if we come down to that, we're probably going to push like just below 1,000 and, kind of peak our head at like 980, 960, and then, look for the reversal there. But same thing, right? It's a scary number to think about, but you're talking, 16, 17%, from where we are, potentially even just back down. If you're looking at this on the same structure, is that these are the lows that are intact, in comparison to Bitcoin. When Bitcoin came down to maybe 15.4, this is where Ethereum stopped, right at 1,077. Yeah. Thing about Bitcoin, or one thing that everybody's really noticed about Ethereum compared is that we haven't taken the low here from June, and that's a very, can be taken a few ways. I think some, are looking for potential, flippening or things of that nature, or maybe that's showcasing that Ethereum's stronger and the altcoins, maybe getting more, powerful buy-ups than Bitcoin would be. But either way, now we have a really big structure here in play. And once again, this market is really thirsty, and I almost hate saying liquidity grabs and this and that, but it's just the best way to kind of showcase it. But the market is really thirsty for liquidity, and you get these little ranges right here, and of the retail space, who's buying and selling right now? Probably not many, right? So you got to incite the market one way or another. And just below here, once again on a daily time frame, you can see how clean we've got daily levels lining up right there. So if anybody's taking long positions right now, where are they going to put their stop loss, right? It's right below this region. Anybody that's been long since last June even, where are they probably putting stop losses at after they've actually seen decent gains that potentially have all, come all the way back down to where they entered. Because most people just don't take profits accordingly. That would be right down here as well. And this daily level has been, like I said, it's just an area that has not been come back to and back tested. The market is very efficient in that manner. There's high statistical, probabilities that this will come down and tag this again. And the fact that we're this close to it really leads me that way. So if we do come down for Bitcoin, like I said, this is the region that I'd be looking for out of ETH. And then with that being said, if that was to take place, you'd see something potentially like this. We'd want to see this area reclaimed, right? The 1,038 level. And then from that is potential for a huge move to the upside, in my opinion.
Right.
Really, something like that would probably give us enough fuel in the market to take us probably back up to $2,000 for ETH. So, that'd be over 100% move out of ETH. You got to imagine that Bitcoin's probably getting a decent move at that point too. Altcoins and as a whole would, we've had this small little rally here, and this has allowed Solana to have 100% move over the last few days. You've had a bunch of other altcoins really excelling. So we'd have a really nice, exciting time probably coming to the market at that point. But to answer your question, if Bitcoin does come down to those areas, I would imagine that Ethereum meets this region right here, probably about back down 1,000, potentially a little sub 1,000 for the moment.
Okay. Yeah. Paul, do you think that we're going to see, obviously with the FOMC meeting coming up, most likely CPI data, starting to see a little bit of reprieve, the concern obviously with jobs still holding strong, obviously Chair Powell is going to continue to push on price stability as his number one, mantra. The likelihood is either we see a small 50, or many people are kind of pointing to maybe there's some other alternatives there. What would happen, in your opinion, if we saw more negative news coming in out of the Fed in February? Based on what you're seeing right now of where the market kind of stands, do you feel like this would be a fairly significant retraction based on what you saw on the last FOMC? If you look at our last little run to 18K, which was really kind of the genesis of that, what are your thoughts around reading around the FOMC numbers?
So for ETH, I am fully anticipating coming down to this level. I've been looking for it for quite some time personally, and to me, it's not that big of a drop. Once again, it's crucial.
What would that drop be right now?
That's
if you were to come to that point?
So that would be 17%. Realistically, I'm looking to come just a little bit below. Let's just say it's 20%. Don't get me wrong. If you have a multi-million-dollar portfolio, 20% haircuts are not fun by any means. So. But in this market, it's not a 50% drop. It's not 60, 70. Things that I think everybody is really, really waiting for. I think that right now we're in a place where the market is just so easily excited and incited with any push up, and easily feared back with any drop down. And in the short term here for ETH, let's just say leading up to the FOMC coming up, I could really see us potentially coming back up towards this $1,300 area. And you can just really box this off almost. It's just a range at the end of the day. But it's a nice little area where you're seeing 10 and 15% fluctuations. We've got a local golden pocket similar to Bitcoin, where we were looking at that at 17.6-ish. So, and that's right above us actually for Ethereum at about 12.81. But as far as, if bad news was to come out with the Fed and things of that nature, I think that would be the final catalyst, or not final, but a really good catalyst to get us down to this region. And when that happens, once again, it really is. I know it's one of those things where it could go up, could go down, but it's in the short term, we pay attention to these levels because it's easy to, not easy, but it's useful to be able to trade short term. Then you want to look, depending on your strategy, if you're looking for mid to long term things. For me, a long term idea would be I'm looking to buy some more long term holds sub $1,000 each.
Right.
So if we get to that region, whether or not we drop from there is, whatever. But if you're looking as far as a DCA idea, it's important to kind of have a strategy mapped out. But if we were to come down to this level, this area, 20% drop on, especially if there's bad news with it, Bitcoin at that point would honestly be making a new low, right? So this, for Ethereum, a 20% drop still keeps us within last year's lows. 20% drop out of Bitcoin, which both of those tend to, move in unison of some degree. Maybe there's a little fluctuation on percentage drop or gain. But if Bitcoin at the same time was to see a 20% drop, that's potentially when we're making a new low, right? So the fear in the market, you're 9% away right now from Bitcoin making a new low. So if we were to see 17, 18, come down to that area, I think that everybody will be focused on this pretty heavily. I think that 10K will be a very relevant target at that point that everybody would potentially be targeting. And now we play the game of, is this just basically 100K, right? Where, anybody that was just dead set on waiting for 100K. And I'll be honest, I was one of those people looking for higher targets at the end of last year until, obviously things changed. But, it's potentially not, but 20, 30%, away. I think that everybody would be really fearful in the fact that we could break down. And this area is just something, once again, just no news around it right now. I'm just looking at this as a total technical idea, is that if we were to come down to this area, claim it, start to see a turnaround, once again, now you've taken all the lows. Once again, this has potential for a really good bounce. And then the thing about this that I like better is actually Ethereum, the Ethereum chart. So in that same idea has the potential to come down, really hurt a lot of feelings, drop back below $1,000 here for ETH, and everybody would probably be anticipating, $500, $300, whatever the case may be. And potentially we come down to those at some point in the future. But I think that is, this is where we, land, in my opinion, if the FOMC and Fed and everything starts aligning in a negative fashion.
Yeah, so your thesis is ETH actually outperforms Bitcoin in the short term based on some negative numbers that might end up resulting some market impact overall. When you look at ETH in the long term versus what Bitcoin, and we'll just pick up 2023 as a number, because there's many people, Eric Voorhees is now on record talking about a $40,000 Bitcoin by mid-year. I'm still skeptical as to whether or not we hit those kind of numbers. But by year end, depending on some of the macro pressures, we're going to see only so many tools inflicted upon us from the Fed because they're kind of running out of juice here. The potential, though, of a long-term hold on high interest rates could really stem some market cool-offs, which many people look to crypto as the potential early recovery asset, meaning when everything else is still in a bit of a free fall, crypto might actually start to see its bottom and come back. Do you feel like that's something that you guys are anticipating toward the end of the year, or do you think this mid-year run for Bitcoin hitting 40K is a possibility?
Anything's a possibility. It's one of those, once again, where, you want to have
Go on, Paul, you can't say that.
All right, I'll give you, let's just say 40K is coming, right? So I'll take another look at Bitcoin, right?
At least you'd be in good company, with Voorhees. He's an OG, so he kind of knows what's going on.
So this would be ideal, honestly. If we're going to see 40K, this sweep the low idea, whatever, come down, doesn't have to be 13,880, doesn't have whatever, but just enough to spook everybody out of the market or get everybody on board with thinking we're going to 10K, and whatever the news catalyst is around there, can be whatever. But, come down one last time. You also got, if you're looking at this in a pattern, I'm sure everybody's looking at this potential falling wedge that could break out to the upside. And if you're measuring that, you're talking about 618 is your target, which puts you at $27,000. All right. I bring that up because, once again, looking at the average of price,
right.
The year for last year just can't, we just changed into 2023. So now 2022's average of price for Bitcoin, could you guess what it is?
I think you said it earlier at 26K.
Yeah, it's right there. So we come in right here at the yearly average right here. So this is a very big area here. So in the short term, this year at some point, mid-year, next couple months, coming up to this region is definitely on the cards, and it's not 40K necessarily, but this is the area that we'd want to break through, and then from there, potentially 40K is on the table.
Open water,
especially if we shake everybody out of this region. There'd be a lot of fuel, I guess, so to speak, in that sense. So
that's an interesting analysis because when you look at the averages of where Bitcoin has been over the last year, have you painted that out over historical performance? Say, take a look at 2021 or even 2020 versus just the 2022 range to see if it kind of balances out with those kind of performances, both in bear and bull markets.
Yeah. So my partner Magic, like I said, he's the Bitcoin whiz of the two of us, and he's actually the one that kind of showcased these ideas of these high time frame averages. But living above or below these averages of Bitcoin, yes, this is a high statistical area that we revisit and visit. Within bear market, within bull market. If you actually take a look right up here, this was last year's, right? So come back down. Where did we actually top at for the year? We right at the yearly average. So you came up, tagged that, down we went. You actually back tested this quite a bit, and there's actually I don't think there's any yearly averages that haven't been back tested here for Bitcoin, and there's only one on Ethereum. That's pretty low, but yeah, they're very much respected across the board throughout so far.
Interesting. Very cool. All right, man, this has been good. It's been fun. I want to get over to our poll today because I know Bitcoin is going to be the big question mark, most likely to pump on positive CPI data next week. Bitcoin says 57% yes. ETH is going to say 22%, and then Solana at 21%. Do you think there's any juice left in Solana right now? This has been a nice little climb over the last few days, coming off of its bottom, around $8. So.
Yeah, no, I love Solana, man. I trade Solana very often. There's so many times when Solana catches like the most fear and then the most FOMO, which is very interesting. Let's see here. Zoom this in a little bit before we get on here. And as far as juice, it could, it's really holding this area. And this is one of those times where you're looking at this in the sense of, when we plan our reactions, right? I know that's just not sexy in the sense of like it's the same as when you're looking at things from a news base, though, right? Because right now, what are we doing? We're sitting here, speculating on what the Fed's going to say, whether that's going to pump or dump the market. And it's the same thing as technicals as well. It's just you're getting a little bit more of a precision, in my opinion, in certain areas to be, getting involved with. So on your last episode that I saw Tim Warren on, actually, I was talking with him after the show because we were looking, you had him looking at Solana, and I was like, oh yeah, man. I was like, if we break this region right here, I'd be looking for 631 was my big area, but we didn't get to it. So what I'm looking at right here is a high time frame range, right, based on volume. So it took 3 months to build out. And what we did was we entered it, come down, and we made a perfect bounce off of the low, right, which was 812. For anybody that, this is a wick, so it's like, most people probably didn't catch that. The area that we were looking for the claim was 999, right? And from there, we were targeting the point of control. There's a slew of all these little levels I have marked here. These are all high statistic targets. These are actually all averages without even just anything else. These are just the average of price that have not been back tested yet for Solana.
Right.
So in the sense of, does this still have juice? We got a gold pocket right above us, and you can kind of see where anybody that was shorting, once again, like it's just a week ago, you would have never thought, Solana would even be hitting everybody's radar again as far as a buy opportunity or this or that. Everybody was very, very interested in shorting it, not holding it anymore. And if you did short right in this region, you saw a pretty big substantial drop. This was like 40% from where we were.
Right.
So anybody shorting, once again, targeting like 0 or targeting 2 or 3, whatever it was, they didn't take profits for the most part. Or let's just say they didn't. Where's all the stop losses now? Well, you can easily see that, this whole little area right here would be where most people would probably put it. So you came up, we're holding a weekly, level right now. As far as like an RSI would go, if anybody's looking at like an RSI junkie is what we always say, but you're cooling off right here, and potentially, there is some more juice to be had here, right? So, because once again, I think that now we're in a position where everybody's trying to short. There's a lot of longs that did come in right here, though I will say that, once again, I can't be quoted, but somebody else was showcasing this analysis. They were showing like upwards of billions, of longs for Solana coming in. So there's definitely some money to be, wiped on that side. But, for me, it's the gold pocket above is a big area. That's about $15. So, and then potentially the $16 region in the short term.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Tim, he hit it. He hit it last week when we were talking about it. We were looking at that $8 price zone, and he was kind of locking in there. And he said he felt like that was going to be the bottom of at least this particular scenario if there was no more bad news. And it was right at it. And then obviously we saw this nice little 60% move up to 13. A little over 14, actually, if you went to the high. So if you did get in on that, then hopefully if you guys traded what we were talking about last week, you made some wins there. Anyway, hey, Paul, it's been great having you on the show today. Thanks so much for stopping in. We definitely got to get you back in. We'll talk about Solana. This one I think is going to be an interesting, token to follow because there's all the news, but also the issues that they're trying to recover from. And I've talked about Solana. My friend James over at Invest Answers, he's a big Solana bull. He and I go back and forth on this one a lot, so it's kind of fun. We definitely got to get you back in on the show for sure. But anyway, thanks again for stopping in today. We appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. It's been a pleasure. Have a great afternoon.
You bet. All right, so you guys are maybe tuned in over on the podcast side of things. We do all these TA analysis videos over here on YouTube, so you get a chance to see a lot of these kinds of charts, and it's really very helpful, I think, visually. And I know we have a lot of podcast listeners. Thank you so much for the subs over there, but really the YouTube channel is the best place to come over and check out all of our detailed videos. Make sure and jump into the Diamond Circle if you're here. If you're not part of that, it's really easy and it's cheap. It's free. So all you have to do is drop in your email. We send you a couple of emails a week to keep you updated on some of the content and a few other pieces there as well. If you guys want to reach me, it is out there on Twitter at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.